Penguin Random House Audio presents a Kim Jong-Il production. The extraordinary true story of a kidnapped filmmaker, his star actress, and a young dictator's rise to power. By Paul Fischer. Read for you by Stephen Park. A note on sources, method, and names. The primary source for this book is the first-hand account of their time and experiences in North Korea by Shin Sang-Ok and Choi Eun-Hee. Shin and Choi have written several memoirs and articles about the years they spent working for Kim Jong-Il, which I have used as a starting point for the research and telling of this story, cross-checking dates and facts against other contemporary accounts, news archives, academic research, and original interviews. I have conducted nearly 50 original interviews with participants in the story, as well as North Korean defectors, either involved in Shin and Choi's own story or who simply lived in North Korea in the 1970s and 1980s and informed my description of that time. And while North Korea largely remains a mystery to outsiders, there are tools today that can help confirm or disprove information, such as Google Earth, used by many studying North Korea to locate buildings and landmarks described by those North Koreans who have escaped. Wherever possible, I have traveled to the locales of the action, to South Korea, Austria, Germany, Hungary, Hong Kong, and of course, North Korea. Most of the physical descriptions in the text are taken from contemporary photographs or footage. Dialogue is only in quotes if quoted in an original source, such as Shin and Choi's memoirs. On occasion, I have shortened dialogue, but I have made rigorous efforts not to excise elements that would alter the intended meaning or tone. Where dialogue was available from several different sources, I chose the translation that seems most accurate and natural in the context, or found the original source and commissioned a new translation from a professional native speaker. My own Korean is extremely rudimentary, so any errors of judgment are, of course, entirely my own. It has become a truism about accounts of North Korea that, because of the DPRK's isolation and lack of transparency, each story must be taken at the teller's word. I have endeavored to corroborate facts wherever it was possible to do so. A more detailed discussion of the process employed to verify Mr. Shin and Madame Choi's personal version of the facts can be found at the end of this book. Korean names are written with the surname first, followed by the personal name. For example, Kim is the family name, Jong-Il the first name. As there is no fixed style regarding spelling, Kim Jong-Il has sometimes been transliterated as Kim Chong-Il and Choi Eun-Hee as Choi Eun-Hee. I have chosen the most common spellings for all names involved. When there was any doubt, I tried to write the names in the most natural, readable way for a Western reader. Until the early 20th century, Koreans traditionally made no use of family names. It was the Japanese Empire, when it colonized the peninsula, that legally required Koreans to do so. The vast majority of Koreans, seeing an opportunity to enhance the perceived prestige of their lineage, chose one of a handful of family names: Kim, Lee, Park, Pak, Shin, associated with the country's landed nobility, so that today only about 270 surnames are shared by over 75 million Koreans. Any people appearing here with the same surname are not related unless specifically indicated. Introduction. August 1982. The last thing Shin Sang-Ok remembered was sitting in his cell, unable to feel his own heartbeat, too weak to move or stand. He had been held in a North Korean detention center for almost 2 years, crammed inside a solitary cell barely big enough to lie down in, with one tiny slit of a window high up on the wall and thick steel bars across it. Bugs teemed through cracks in the floor. Except for a 30-minute lunch break, a 10-minute supper, and a 30-minute sunning period in the prison yard, he was required to sit in the exact same position all day, head bowed and motionless, absolutely stock still, or suffer even greater punishment. He had been on a hunger strike for 5 days when he lost consciousness. Now, awakening in a prison infirmary, he struggled to breathe. The August air was hot and thick with humidity. A blinding headache blurred his thoughts. His mouth felt dry and metallic, and his stomach was seized with cramps. The simplest movement hurt. "This guy is probably going to make it," a voice said. "He just moved his toes." Shin blinked his eyes open. An investigator was standing by his bed, a high-ranking military officer at his side. A prison guard stood attentively behind them. The two men talked among themselves in agitated tones, never addressing Shin directly. After a short while, all three men left. It was then that Shin became aware of another prisoner in the room. The convict pulled a chair up by Shin's bed and brought him a tray of food. Shin knew him. He was a trustee, an inmate given charge of basic tasks around the prison, sweeping, mopping, serving food, and delivering messages, in exchange for more freedom and time out of his cell. Often, a trustee was also a snitch. It was the way he had obtained his position and the way he kept it. "Eat," the trustee said. Shin looked at the tray. Rice soup, a bowl of stew, and an egg. By prison standards, the food was luxurious. Shin turned it down anyway. When the trustee spooned some soup out of the bowl and tried to feed him, Shin pinched his mouth shut tight. "Take it," the trustee insisted. "It will do you good. You need to eat." The man persisted, and eventually Shin gave in. At first, the thought of food made him feel sick, but one taste and his hunger rushed back. He quickly devoured most of the meal, but, in gratitude, left some of it for the trustee. "What happened?" Shin asked. "You missed roll call yesterday," the trustee said. "I went to check on you and found you unconscious on the floor. You should have seen their faces. They were so scared they let you die. They sent for the doctor and he checked your pulse and had you taken here. They'll be relieved to know you will live." The trustee eyed him carefully. "Now I really know you're an important person. No one cares here if a prisoner dies. I went on hunger strike once. They told me that a man dies in 10 days from hunger, a woman 15. It didn't take me long to give in and start begging for food. I've heard of important prisoners on hunger strike being held down and force-fed through a funnel. They wouldn't even do that for you. For the sake of your pride, they said. That's how important you are." "Who was that officer?" Shin asked. "The stranger?" It was the Minister of People's Security, the trustee explained, the head of all law enforcement in the country. "That's the first time I ever saw the Minister of People's Security come all the way out to the prison just because some prisoner was starving to death. He raised all kinds of hell." "You must be joking." The trustee shook his head, deep in thought. "You must be very favored for them to care what happens to you. Do you know someone? Who do you know?" Shin closed his eyes. He thought of the prison around him, of the inmates tapping on each other's cell walls to communicate, of the ones suddenly and arbitrarily taken out to the yard to be executed, of their cruel and violent guards. For almost 2 years he had lived in brutal, meaningless captivity, yet he didn't know a single person in the entire country. Shin Sang-Ok was 55 years old, divorced, with 4 children. He was the most famous filmmaker in his native South Korea, where he had made blockbusters, won every possible award, and rubbed shoulders with presidents. 4 years earlier, his ex-wife, Choi Eun-Hee, the most famous actress in South Korea, had disappeared while in Hong Kong, and when he went to find her, he had been tricked and kidnapped. Now, after an initial period of less stringent house arrest, he was trapped in prison number 6, 2 hours outside Pyongyang, North Korea. No, Shin did not know anyone, and he still did not know why he had been taken. But he did know one thing. He knew who had ordered his abduction. In Pyongyang, miles away from the reeking cells and corridors of prison number 6, Kim Jong-Il knocked back his Hennessy, put the glass down, and watched as a waiter silently poured him a refill. The party in full flow around him was one of the weekly banquets that Kim held for top members of the Workers' Party's Central Committee. The large, bright hall was decorated with an explosion of garish fake flowers and swiveling colored lights. At the tables laid out around the dancing area, party cadres and Central Committee officers were eating the finest food, both Western lobsters.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?